Budget builds. Whether it's your first gun or your 50th, affordable firearms aren't just limited to those that want to progress their skills with a gun that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. Perhaps you just want a new range toy, or maybe you want to experience a new caliber or platform. Or maybe you have a relatively small YouTube channel that often features budget products just to remind folks that sometimes you get more than you pay for. Regardless, there simply is a place for budget options out there, especially when you consider the AR-15. You know, the most popular and mass-produced rifle in America. And with such a long-standing history of production behind it, any brand should be capable of producing a solid AR at an affordable price. Should being the key word here. So on today's video, we'll be putting that very sentiment to the test as we review what will hopefully be a cost-to-quality approved AR-15 from a brand that has essentially become a household name. The Palmetto State Armory Guardsman 15. Now, when you're talking about a company that's pumping out new products on such a massive scale like PSA, it's understandable that folks might be a little skeptical about the overall quality control and initial development that goes into them, especially when you have a complete rifle that costs less than my BCM upper. However, judgment's a two-way street, and depending on whose navigation advice you ask for, you may find yourself headed in the wrong direction. In other words, don't go asking a Chevy driver what they think of Ford, expecting a rave review. Anyhow, for those of you that aren't familiar with the Guardsman series, it's what PSA describes as their high-value, feature-rich lineup of firearms. So in layman's terms, it's their mid-tier offering between their very budget options and their higher-end stuff. So with that in mind, join me as we hit the range to determine whether or not the Palmetto State Armory Guardsman 15 is the new Budget King AR-15. So, minus the sling, this is what you're working with right out of the box. Just another entry-level AR? We're going to find out. Once again, sticking with the budget theme, we've got a couple different brands of affordable ammo because any AR should be able to eat whatever you throw in it. All right, first shots. Let's see how she runs. Or if she runs. I don't know. Kind of feels like there's something missing. I don't even think this thing requires an optic. So of course I went ahead and threw an optic on there, keeping it with the budget theme. This is the Primary Arms MD21. Very affordable, but actually a pretty decent red dot. So other than that, as far as the rifle itself, as for fit and finish, it's got a pretty decent lockup, surprisingly. And as you see, it's got the matte black finish on it, which looks good. Nothing special there, but handguard feels really good. It's actually got some additional set screws in there to help keep things locked up tight. You get the Magpul stock. This is actually one of my favorite stocks, so I'm pretty happy to see that. Also get the Magpul MOE grip. As far as stock grips go, this is fine. I'm kind of spoiled on the dye-free coat grips, which we'll be seeing a little bit later. And for the trigger, they have what they call their Guardsman series trigger. But if I'm not mistaken, this is actually just a rebranded Schmidt trigger. However, it is better than a mil-spec, so pretty decent. So yeah, I mean, first impressions, doing pretty good. Except for this absolute garbage mil-spec charging handle. Unforgivable. So if you're an idiot like me, you might find yourself in a similar position, where you need to zero your rifle, but you forgot your bipod. But no worries, I got a pro tip for you. I won't even charge for that one. So I was testing out the grouping at around 10 yards, and that was my first round. Pretty good, but we're going to go ahead and run it back, see if she stays consistent. All right, let's do a little 10-yard accuracy test. All right, so far she shoots pretty good. The gas feels, let me get that finger out of the way. Gas feels pretty good. Recoil system, you know, may need some work when we get to suppress shooting, but we'll find out. Anyway, pretty good groupings. If I'm going to shoot at 10 yards, I would bring this up. I was aiming in this top credit card box, but not bad is what I tried to say before I accidentally stopped the video. So there are a few things that you can't see that help set the Guardsman apart from the lower tier models, especially when you consider the cost to quality ratio. You get a tapered chrome-lined vanadium barrel, which means it's going to be more lightweight and it's going to prolong your barrel life. You get a pinned gas block, which is going to ensure proper gas flow. Don't have to worry about your gas block twisting. But that also means if you plan on running this thing suppressed, you may end up having to do some tuning with your buffer system, which we'll find out later because I am going to put a suppressor on this. And last but certainly not least, you get a souped up bolt carrier group that includes Springco gas rings, and it's individually tested instead of batch tested, which means in theory, this should be a much more reliable and durable BCG than what you may come to expect from PSA. Let's see how she handles some speed. You know, all this shooting's got me pretty thirsty. And all this talk about cost to value ratio has me thinking about one of the most budget-friendly and satisfying things that I know of. An ice-cold yard beer. Am I right? Cheers. Refreshing. But you know what's more refreshing? Liking this video and subscribing to the channel. And heck, that's free. Let's go ahead and rip one out to 200 yards. Let's run this trigger for all she's worth. So at this point, I put 300 rounds through the Guardsman 15, and I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed. I haven't had a single malfunction, or any issues at all for that matter, and overall, it's just been enjoyable to shoot. However, there are some non-negotiable parts that I have to swap out, namely the charging handle and the safety selector. These mil-spec charging handles are just garbage, and this selector is actually what used to come on CMMG completes, so I am familiar with it and not a fan. It's got a really thin profile, as you can see there, so it's a little difficult to manipulate, and it's a 90-degree throw, which is a no-go for me. Otherwise, I am going to throw some additional parts on here just to make this girl sing. Going to swap out the muzzle brake, add a hand stop, add a mag well, and I am going to change out the grip for a Di-Frico. Nothing wrong with this grip, it's just a personal preference. But yeah, very solid so far. Let's see if we can get a matching hole on the bottom down there. Didn't quite line it up, but close. All right, we're gonna go ahead and throw a suppressor on here. So let's check our ejection pattern before we put the suppressor on and see where we're at. And then we'll check it again after we get the suppressor on there. All right, we've got our suppressor on here now, so I'm anxious to see what our ejection pattern looks like and whether or not it actually cycles. Cycled just fine. I did see the casings flying forward, so it looks like we're pretty overgassed. So while obviously the suppressor I have on here is creating quite a bit of back pressure, which is why we're getting those casings flying forward, you can run this out of the box with the suppressor, even if you don't have a flow-through can or a heavier buffer, either of which would probably resolve that ejection pattern entirely. Nevertheless, I've seen higher end rifles with that same ejection pattern when you run them suppressed. So all in all, not bad. You know we got to run the old suppressed bill drill. Oh yeah, she's purring. We'll send a couple out to 100 suppressed. So I really got to say, not even counting the suppressor, just a few little upgrades I threw on here, like the safety selector, the charging handle, and even the hand stop, really made this feel like a premium rifle. And while it is great out of the box, aside from the charging handle, I think that you could really make this a pretty decent rifle with just a couple upgrades, a little bit of personalization. But yeah, I mean, I've shot the heck out of this thing. It has not had a single issue, even up to 500 rounds. So overall, I think this is a really good value for even an intermediate shooter, to be honest with you. So for my final thoughts on the Palmetto State Armory Guardsman 15, despite what the internet may have some of you believing regarding PSA's overall quality, in my personal experience, I've come to find that they're highly capable of making a decent quality firearm. And this one is no exception. After hundreds of rounds and everything from fully stock configuration to slightly upgraded and even suppressed, I can confidently say that unless this thing craps the bed in the months to come, the Guardsman 15 is a good value for the money. Now, this isn't to say that running 500 rounds through a rifle with no issues is a determination of its overall quality. But what I can say is I've shot far more expensive rifles with far less satisfying results. So with that in mind, based on my intuition and what I saw from this rifle during the break-in period, I do feel confident in my summary. So in conclusion, I think it's awesome that PSA added this to their lineup so you don't have to break the bank to get a decent rifle, aside from the charging handle. Nevertheless, I think the Guardsman 15 makes for a great option for those of you in the early stages of your shooting, or even more advanced shooters that just want a decent plinker so they don't have to worry about shooting the barrel out of their safe queen. Bruh. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you'd be so kind as to like, subscribe, share, and drop me a comment and let me know what you think of PSA products, that would be greatly appreciated and it will really help the channel. And as always, remember to count your blessings and stay vigilant. God bless you all. Just a good old boy.